Cool. We're good to go, so let's get going. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fire Emblem Darius the Conqueror live stream. I hope you're doing well, having a lovely, lovely day and a lovely, lovely week. Thank you all so much for tuning in once again. Zane is back, the creator of this ROMHack, to talk us through the game and just all that stuff. Once again, it's fantastic to have you on board. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. Now, last time we left off, we conquered the capital, but then that other dude was a complete prick with what was happening, so we had to use technical legislation to stop him, you know, temporarily and all that stuff. And then we got asked a religious question and answered incorrectly. Spoilers, you were always going to answer incorrectly. And now we've got to get through this map and run like a bitch.
Yes. Have to escape the sewers.
Yeah. Oh, this is the sewers? Oh, yeah. Oh, I see it now, yeah.
It's supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, because initially the plan for this map was to have water tiles, but unfortunately, I used a new, a custom version of the castle tile set,
yeah.
And unfortunately, whoever made it, the water tiles turned out really glitchy.
I see.
So they did not look correct, and I was forced to fill them in.
Yeah, it's a bit more obvious when you're fighting. Those backgrounds make it a bit more obvious, but it's just one of those things. It's like look, the original graphics were glitchy. This is the best I could do, and again, it's fair enough. It's not like it's a pivotal this, that, and the other. Anyway,
to be fair, it's not the original graphics.
Yeah.
That are found in the game, so that's probably why they glitchy.
Yeah,
they glitch out.
More than likely. You're trying to use not available assets. Oh, we can't have that here.
It's kind of the thing with making ROM hacks, is that you have to accept
limitations.
At some point that you have to accept at some point that glitches are just a part of the process, and you will encounter them while working on a ROM hack, regardless of whatever you do.
Yeah, well, that's working on games in general. Glitches are bound to happen all the damn time. It's just whether or not... Yeah. It's just the frequency of them and whether you can work around them. Yeah, because, like, exactly. Man, we've seen... Throughout history, we've seen game glitches up the wazoo.
I know. And then, of course, we can also invoke the name of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, which, you know, is the poster child... At least for a Nintendo game. For a
Nintendo game, specifically.
Yeah.
Not for video games in general. If it was, that would be a really good thing, but it's not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have stuff like, you know, Skyrim, a lot of Bethesda games apparently, where they're glitched up the wazoo, but people still like them.
Well, yeah, they're glitched, but that's more so janky, and it doesn't, like, ruin the experience. Whereas other games are just glitchy to the point of being unplayable. I think that's the difference. Mm-hmm. I guess it does depend on the glitch in question. Because, you know, some glitches are, like, or exploits are used to actually better a game, and so on and so forth. Like, when you glitch through certain... Like, you know, for example, in Sonic 06, even though the game is buggy and it's usually a bad thing, you can also use some of the glitches to skip over parts of the game which aren't fun, like the block-pushing puzzle. The ball puzzle, I meant, in Silver's campaign. You can glitch through the door, and that's useful.
And especially because, you know, that puzzle's not fun to play through normally.
No, it is not.
But yeah, or you have something like Mario Sunshine, which is famous for having a lot of glitches, but most of the glitches are not stuff that's going to directly impact the game.
Yeah.
In a massively negative way. Although sometimes they do.
Sometimes, but not that often, honestly, with Sunshine. Sunshine's a funny case when it comes to glitches, so to speak. I don't know, like, the glitches in Sunshine you don't notice that often. Like, some of them you have to actively search for, but others it's like... You only really look at them if you do some of the more advanced stuff. If you play the game normally, you don't usually notice. Right,
and Grima, you know, I didn't encounter, like, any major glitches in Scarvio either. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, obviously that does not negate the fact that people have encountered them.
Yes.
You know, and even though I didn't encounter glitches, you know, the performance was still bad in that game. You know,
Did they ever fix that?
But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, obviously, when it comes to glitches, you know, sometimes you have cases where, you know, people just don't encounter them. And it doesn't mean that they're not a problem, but, you know, it does potentially mean that they're less of a problem than people think.
they might be blown a bit out of proportion, but it doesn't mean the problem doesn't exist.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because people were making it out like Scarlet and Violet was like this unplayable, buggy mess. That's not the case. A lot of people played it just fine. But there were instances of glitches happening, and that wasn't good. It may not be to the extent that the internet proclaimed it to be, but it's still a problem. It's just a case of the problem is a bit overblown. Again, the problem exists, the extent of the problem is exacerbated. But even if you take down the exacerbation, the problem still remains.
Yeah.
For example, while not to the same degree and not as big of a sin, everyone complained about Smash Ultimates Online because it was crap. So by the way, I stole the Dragon Scale. Hoorah. Now, some people were like, well, my Smash Ultimate Online experience has been fine. Okay, it's fine for you, but the fact of the matter is, because of so many instances, Smash Ultimate does have bad online.
Exactly. And you also have to keep in mind that, you know, the glitches and performance issues are not the only problem with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, because that game has other problems too. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I'm not necessarily. I don't necessarily feel compelled to go into all of them. Well,
I haven't played the game, so I can't comment. All I can say is, like, what's the thing? A lot of people, I think, for glitches, because a lot of people did like Scarlet and Violet and stuff like that. Especially gameplay-wise, they really enjoyed it. But the main takeaway for them was the glitches, especially because this is something we haven't seen in Pokemon yet.
I know.
Yeah, good see.
I mean, well, I've also heard that BDSP was pretty buggy, but that was a case where, like, I did not encounter a single glitch at all.
I don't know who's been saying BDSP is buggy, because not only have I not encountered it, I didn't hear. This is the first I've heard of it, so I think that might be someone just either using their personal experience as a basis, or they're doing what they can to shit on BDSP, because trust me, people will do that. I don't like it, but people do it. It's just annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, BDSP gets a lot of flack, and I think it's, I think it's overblown. I'm not saying it's, like, completely unwarranted, but I do think people really, really overblow the criticism when it comes to Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearls. Yeah, I find it a little bit tragic, to be honest.
I think that they overblow criticisms towards modern Pokemon games in general.
I would agree. I'm not saying some of the criticisms aren't valid, but like I said, they overblow them. They're a bit like, okay, now you're just being silly.
Yeah. It's one thing. I mean, every franchise that runs on for as long as Pokemon does is inevitably going to run into the problem of people automatically assuming that everything made past a certain point sucks. And that sort of discourse is always frustrating to navigate, because
a lot of it's obviously a lot of it's not even based on actual reasoning. It more comes down to nostalgia blindness.
Exactly, you know, and the thing is that that is prevalent. You know, it's even a thing with, like, Disney nowadays, to some extent. And it's tough, because with Disney, you can kind of see it. Like, I've heard a lot of people say that, you know, Wish is just not a very good movie. Mm-hmm. You know, and based on what I've seen of people say from it, you know, I can totally see where they're coming from. But then people will use it to jump on, like, this idea of, you know, oh, Disney is only producing bad stuff, you know, has only been producing trash since, you know, 2016 or whatever.
Which, again, I don't agree with. They have produced some good stuff. It's just more of the stuff may not be as good as their peak era. Some of it has been pretty good. Again, there have been some pretty good projects every now and then. But continue, Zane. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and part of that, you know, we went on a whole rant about. I went on a whole rant about the Star Wars sequel trilogy, and it frustrates me that people are using those movies to
condemn the entire Disney era of Star Wars.
Yeah, as a way to, you know, show Disney's fall from grace, because, like I said, part of my issue is that so much of the criticism towards those movies is coming from a bad place of, you know, people being upset about people using the potentially legitimate criticisms about the storytelling in those movies as a jumping off point to complain about, stuff like the increased visibility of, women and people of color in, big blockbuster picks, which, and that's a whole other topic for another time.
Hey, good to see you, Ryuki. Well, I hope you enjoyed the stream. Again, well, it's just like, honest to God, when it comes to the whole increased representation, hey, as long as it isn't forced, as long as the actors do a good job, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
That's the thing at the end of the day. If the actors do a good job at what they're meant to do, what does it matter?
I know, exactly. And it's harder to have that... It's harder for that representation to be forced as some people think. Because... to use an example, the scene from Avengers Endgame where all of the female characters, get a lineup, and people argue, oh, this scene doesn't work. It only works in a representational sense because none of these characters ever interacted with each other, really. And I just sit there thinking like, bruh, it's just a cool moment.
Not only that, but it's like none of these characters interacted. Pretty sure Gamora and Nebula interacted a lot. Pretty sure, what'd you call it? Okoye and Shuri interacted a lot. Pretty sure that I'm thinking of other female characters in the MCU that may have interacted, that were in the lineup. Like, there's Pepper, there's Scarlet Witch, there's well, Captain Marvel hasn't, but again, that's fine. There's Valkyrie. Yeah, again, it's like some of them have, and again, it's just, oh look, there's all the Avengers there, and it's like it's all the female Avengers. Cool. Is it a little bit forced? Yeah, but is it something to fucking cry about? No. Again, I think it says more about the people when this is their major point of contention of the overall thing. Like, I like Avengers Endgame. I love Avengers Endgame. But that movie is not perfect, and it's got much bigger problems than a female group shot.
I know, exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of people who will tell you that the way they handled Thor in that movie was not great. I personally... I thought... go ahead, actually. Yeah, you first. I mean, I personally think that, Thor's whole depression thing was not as treated for laughs and played off as a joke as some people think, personally. So I wasn't as bothered by it, and I've dealt with depression, and honestly, I don't think it's a dishonest way of portraying depression, and how people respond to it. And again, that's just my way of
interpretation,
thinking, And it's tough because, I'm going on this whole thing of like, people using legitimate criticisms as a springboard to be sexist, and that sounds very, liberal SJW type of thing. But really, it's something that you do have to keep in mind, and it's not to say that that your criticism is invalid just because it can be taken a certain way. It's just to say that you have to be aware of it, and that's something that I feel like is not taken into account by a lot of people when they level critiques at modern media in general, honestly. And part of it is it just goes back to the massive deficit in media literacy that seems to be plaguing the internet in general,
and an overall lack of critical thinking from society.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is why they need to teach the arts in schools.
Well, it's funny you say that. We were talking about this yesterday. So, the actor James McAvoy?
Yes, James McAvoy.
Yeah, he was mentioning how one of the main problems a lot of public school systems had is that the arts are very disencouraged and people are not exposed to them. And when we say the arts, we don't just mean art as in painting. The arts could be theatre, more like, languages, costume making, all that jazz. The art, anything along that creative line. Generally speaking, public schools are not exposed to it very much. You might get it as a one-off, but you don't really go into it. And most people aren't explored to it unless they actively seek it as adults. But even then, if they're not as an adult, it's harder to find time for these things, and also we're less as a child, we're much more open to things as we are as opposed to being an adult. And while it doesn't guarantee that they will necessarily become an artist just by looking at it, giving them the opportunity because of that openness and letting them, just partake in these would be better for a lot of people. But again, it only happens to the upper class and the rich, and it's it's very like gatekeeping, if you will.
I think one of the reasons that schools don't prioritize teaching the arts more and creative disciplines more is because they are such a historically unstable, unreliable job path for people to go down.
That's true.
Because being a successful creative type in any medium is very much a lottery. It comes down to the honest stuff. It comes down to appeal and marketing almost entirely. But even then, it's never certain.
That's true. It's definitely more lucrative than standard professions.
Yeah, it can potentially be more lucrative. Yeah, if you know your creative vision is honest enough to connect with people, say. But again, there's no guarantee of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when iPatch Wolf did his video on internet influencer courses, and the idea of growing your social media platform.
No problem, Creeper. Good to see you. Yeah, and Umbra, good to see you too. Good to see you Tackle as well. But continue.
Yeah. So yeah, it's I think I said this in my update video that I posted to my channel, is that it does feel like a lot of times it does really feel like the world is becoming increasingly more hostile towards creatives and such, and I mean it's getting bad in a lot of ways for a lot of people. Make no mistake, but it does feel like there is a particular hostility towards creative types in general, even as we're making the stuff that the entertainment that people consider to be essential to help them get through the day. So
yeah, but that's well, that comes down to that's also a problem of consumerism. Good to see you, Matt. Because as creatives, we can make amazing stuff, but because there's such a demand for it, creatives are often put into very, very difficult, overworked, and stressful situations to make that content, even though, as a creative, and most creators could tell you, creativity isn't something you can force. That's why, as much as, for example, while I get people are passionate about it, it's been 2 years since I've done the Citrus fanfic, because, well, for one thing, I want to work on it and do best as can, but the drive isn't there to work on it that I have with other videos. And while I know people want it, I don't want to force something out, which is why I have not worked on it. But for other people, they sometimes get quite insistent that it's like, yo, where's the next bit? When's the next bit? This, not understanding, because they're just a consumer. They're not understanding from the creative standpoint, like the whole process that goes into making the entire thing.
I know. And that's tricky as well, I floundered a lot with there was one point where I was trying to essentially build my YouTube channel basically just as a way to gain enough clout that I could, in my mind, ask people for help when it came to, say, making other creative projects, like making the original version of Black Dragon, because I had this idea in my head that I needed a lot of other people to help me with that. In reality, all I needed to do was just wait for FE Builder to come out and simplify the process.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. But the thing I found very quickly is that a lot of the videos that were getting me my initial popularity on YouTube, like the Radiant Dawn Law supports videos, or even stuff like the video game reviews that I tried doing for like a hot second, they weren't what I was really wanting to do, because they were efforts. They were a lot of effort, you know, and it's not to say that, you know, making Darius the Conqueror was less effort, but it was a different kind of high effort that I felt invigorated to do, and I felt I could keep doing it over a long period of time in a way that I didn't really get from making a lot of YouTube videos.
It was very much a case of love the process.
Yeah, you know, learn to fall in love with the process. And it helped that Darius, the production of this hack kind of coincided with a boom period for me in general, where, you know, I was working out more. I just was more disciplined in general for the most part. You know, and I was being very outgoing. You know, so that was part of it. But it was also just the thing you have to understand is that there is no way to work around work. You know, there is no way to avoid working hard, even if it's something that you care about. It's just that with a job that you care about, it's a kind of work where the negatives of it don't matter as much to you.
Yeah, they don't stop you from putting in 100% effort, because if it's a job you don't care about, again, lots of people, they will find any ways to not work as best they can. They'll put in the minimum effort. They're just there for the paycheck.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to, you know, say going back to YouTube again, YouTube is a difficult job, you know, and it requires a lot of work. But, you know, so a lot of people have this perception that, you know, social media jobs like YouTube or TikTok or whatever, they're not necessarily hard work in the same way as, you know, working a typical office job. But that's just not true. You know, it's a different kind of hard work.
Well, yeah.
And in some ways, as iPatchWolf said in his video on online influencer courses, you know, in some ways, it's actually a little bit more stressful on creatives. But the thing is that for people who genuinely love doing it, the stressful parts are stuff that you can compartmentalize and that don't ultimately matter as much.
I can 100% relate to that, yes.
Yeah. So it's, you know, and that I think is true of any job, any creative job in particular, is that you're never going to find a job that is completely free of negatives. It's just that you have to find the job that
it's worth getting through the negatives.
Yeah, where the negatives are not enough to hold you back.
Yeah, because it's like the phrase they say, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That's not 100% true. It's basically saying that if you find a job that you love, it won't feel like mundane work. And that is true. It doesn't feel mundane. Whenever I do YouTube or this and stuff like that, and animations, it doesn't feel mundane. It's tedious. It's hard. It's long. Holy shit, is it long? But it doesn't feel tedious. Whereas other jobs, even if the work isn't that much, it can feel so tedious and it drains you.
So anyways, about this map and what's going on in the gameplay.
Yeah.
Again, we got very sidetracked.
Hey, again, I mean, we've already talked about at length about some of the things, and we'll get more into depth when we fight the boss and so on. But having these conversations is good. It's, you know, it's more than just commentary on the game. It's also that extra layer of depth that comes with, you know, just the personalities, or in this case, the commentator and the co-commentator.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I really loved the Tuesday stream we did because it had a lot of that.
Yeah, very much so. And it all started with Star Wars.
Pretty much, yeah. Just remember to get that chest.
Yeah, I see it right there.
We completely talked over Targaach and Persephone's support, but I actually really like it, especially the A support. A lot of Targaach's supports kind of ended up being him coming to grips, you know, him sort of coming to grips with his daughter being, you know, his family being dead, and finding a new family of sorts among
the group,
the army here.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a big theme of his support with Persephone there. And and also his support with Winahea, which I think is one of my personal favorites that I wrote.
Nice. So Taka was asking, and this is a good question. Are you doing the 5 support limit like GBA does, or can people support more than that?
I think it's up to 10 in this hack.
Okay,
is the patch that I put in. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Creeper.
Vanilla
that's
GBA,
very kind of
you can only. Yeah, in Vanilla GBA, you can only view up to 5 support conversations, which is, you know, either.
Look, I like the GBA era. I think people give it a bit too much shit these days, but I will never defend the support system. Never.
I know. Yeah, GBA supports. I mean, honestly, like pre-awakening supports are.
Path of Radiance
messy.
almost had it. Path of Radiance almost had it.
Yeah.
Because it had this, it had the support acquisition down pat. It was deployment based, meaning you didn't have to put units next to each other. You just had to deploy them on the same map. Good. That's a really good thing, but it still only had the 5 support limit, which is so fucking dumb.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Yeah. Thankfully, Awakening onwards got rid of that. Again, say what you will about the 3DS era, they fixed supports good.
Yes.
Did Fates go overboard? Yes, but the system itself was absolutely fine. It's just the quantity of supports in Fates was obnoxious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing with, you know, going back to the whole concept of, you know, nostalgia and people viewing...
Oh, members card. Nice.
You know, viewing a particular... Oh, yeah, this members card. I will let you know that there's not going to be a secret shop for at least a couple chapters.
That's cool. Yeah, but no, I assume you want to go back to the idea of, you know, people saying that a franchise died after a certain point and how that applies to other things, specifically Fire Emblem.
Yeah, that's always been a big thing with me and Fire Emblem, is that people seem very unwilling to... Because there's a big part of the Fire Emblem fan base that to this day is still seems unwilling to acknowledge when the modern era of Fire Emblem does something well. And I hate that.
Well, no,
so much.
Well, it's ridiculous because regardless of what you think of the era as a whole, if something's good, something's good. Doesn't again, even if maybe the rest of the product isn't to your liking, if something's good, something's good. You can't be that petty.
Because the more I look at the more I look at Fire Emblem, you know, in terms of eras, the more I sort of think that it's a case of different eras of Fire Emblem do different things well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think that on average, you know, pre-Awakening Fire Emblem, the stories are, again, on average, a little bit better. I don't necessarily think that means that they're all, you know, 10 out of 10 masterpieces, because I'm of the opinion
no Fire
that...
Emblem game has a 10 out of 10 masterpiece story.
I'm of the opinion that Path of Radiance is great tier. Radiant Dawn, my personal feelings aside, because I love Radiant Dawn's story, but it's got some structural problems. I think that Radiant Dawn is good tier, Three Houses is good tier, and Fire Emblem 7 is good tier.
Okay.
Every other game that I have played, the story has ranged from okay to bad with amazing moments.
Okay, you know, I find interesting you putting Blazing Sword in good tier. A lot of people, from what I engaged with, a lot of people don't really like Blazing Sword's story, and I don't see many people put it above Sacred Stones. But again, everyone's different. I find that interesting because again, a lot of people don't seem to like Blaze. Not everybody hates it. I think it's fine. I think it's good, but not great. But all right, please. Tell us.
I think that Blazing Sword's story is very well constructed. Sacred Stones, I think, like I said, has really good moments and really. And some really amazing characters. You know, everything to do with Lion is amazing. And it has a pretty solid roster of villains.
Yep.
But the world building feels kind of undercooked. I think I've said this before.
Yeah.
And there's a few other problems, like, you know, we talk about, you know, it has a really strong opening, but I think that the thing with Sacred Stones is that in terms of pure pacing, it moves maybe just a little too quickly for its own good.
It
could have spent it is a pretty short game. And also, I think that Sacred Stones does not handle the route split quite as well as it could have been. I think Zerk actually has a video on this where he talks about how, depending on the different pathways you get a totally different experience. Like in Erica route,
it's a lot of backstory and world building.
Yeah, well, Erica's route, Lion is very clearly being controlled by the Demon King, but in Ephraim's route, it's he's conscious of his actions. He's just, he's being influenced by Femortis, but not necessarily controlled by him, which is so much more interesting.
Yeah, again, it's really one of those cases where I guess they wanted you to just get the full picture by playing both, but considering that Leon is a central part of the story, unless you play the Ephraim route, the Erica route leaves a lot to be desired from his point of view, from in terms of him. Also, we got
pretty
Wyverns. Yeah, we got Wyverns. I've got bows. Thank God. Right,
got
so
bows and a Wormslayer.
Yeah, so the boss, you said Crixus had a conversation with him.
Yes, Crixus and Darius have battle dialogue with him.
And here comes Farah, my man. Also, Umbra, GBA, FE7, your favorite GBA Fire Emblem game? Mad respects. Trust me, these days I see a lot of people shitting on FE7, so it's nice when someone actually does like it. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Thank you for tuning in.
Hi, Farah. Glad you could make it.
Right, let's make our way up and get rid of these damn Wyverns. That's fine, Tackle. Again, I'm cool with that. Good to see Aqua. I get why people do and don't like FE7. Like, until Free House, it was my favorite Fire Emblem game. I'm fine with people not liking it. It's just that over the years, especially some people, both that I've experienced within the server and Fire Emblem at large, it's not that you dislike the game. That's not my problem. It's the way people go about disliking it. That's my problem. They say such... I know. Again, it's the way they say certain things where I'm like, what kind of person are you where you would regard something in such a vile and disrespectful manner?
I know, and that's kind of the trouble, is that it does go both ways in the Fire Emblem community. I tend to be harsher on what I call the elitists, the people who are anti-modern Fire Emblem, because I like modern Fire Emblem, Zerk, he's a bit more of a classic Fire Emblem fan, so he tends to portray the pro-modern Fire Emblem people as being, slightly worse, because they have historically been worse to him with a lot of his videos that talk about...
Yeah, because of his experience and the type of audience he's engaged with.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Which I don't think... I don't know if that's necessarily fair in terms of representing which side is worse, and honestly, I don't think that that's important.
Well, you can't fully say which side is worse, because everyone has different experiences with each side. No side is necessarily worse. It all just comes down to the subject in question, the context, and in this case, your experience with the side. And also, your biases too, because remember, Zerk is partially biased to the classic side.
Exactly.
Again, I must stress, partially.
Yeah.
So again, it's not something that's... there's no clear-cut answer. No clear-cut answer in the context of Fire Emblem? Who'd have thought?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's why it is important that, you have friends who are willing to be understanding, because the internet is such a vicious hive of bees.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. What's your... so yeah, Grieper asking, what's your favorite Fire Emblem game overall, Zane?
Three Houses.
Okay, nice.
Three Houses. Three Houses, second is Radiant Dawn, and third is Awakening.
Woo! Nice. I mean, I'm very much like... so Radiant Dawn was your favorite till Three Houses, because my FE7 was my favorite, and then Three Houses came along.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah. Oh my god, this poor Wyvern. It's not the fact that I got super effective damage, I was doubling with super effective damage, and I'm a knight.
Doubling with super effective damage, and remember that Devil Axe lowers his defenses.
Well, we didn't have a discussion about Blazing Sword at all, we just mentioned it and stuff like that. And no, the only thing we talked about Blazing Sword earlier was that I found it interesting that Zane placed it higher than a lot of other Fire Emblem games regarding narrative, because most people would place it lower. I just found that an interesting take, is all. Because, again, I'm used to people disregarding Blazing Sword, especially from a narrative point of view.
Yeah, and my take was that Blazing Sword is just generally better put together. I think Sacred Stones has higher peaks,
but that's only part of it. Yeah, that's only part of it.
Yeah, but I don't think it. I think it's a lot less consistent.
You know what? That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes ever from this thing, because a lot of people, I see this a lot, and especially this, I saw this a lot with Engage. It's this rule: stories are not scenes in isolation. They're the entire construct of the narrative. You can't just pick out bits you like and suddenly claim that the story is great based on these hype moments. They might be great moments, but when you consider the full, how do they work within the full context? And that's one of the things that I think people, and again, it can be more than the stories, it's just in general, people take things out of isolation, remove them out of context, and then overinflate them to validate their own argument without actually really understanding the full breadth of it.
Yeah, and I'm of the opinion that every Fire Emblem, even the ones that have weak stories,
have something good going for them.
They all have amazing moments. Even Fates.
Yeah,
I maintain
best premise.
The end.
Best premise.
I know. I maintain that the end of Fate's Conquest Chapter 18, the scene where the Norian and Hoshiden royals have this banquet in whatever the name of the peace duchy, the peaceful duchy is. Mm-hmm. I maintain that is a scene that transcends, that is better than a lot of moments from any Fire Emblem game, because I love scenes where you have two opposing forces in a place where they are not allowed to fight or try and kill each other.
Yes.
And I don't think we've seen very many scenes of that. We got a little bit of stuff like that in Three Houses in like one or two instances, but I would love a full scene like that in another Fire Emblem game. Yeah. And again, it's an amazing moment. I just wish that the rest of the story around it was better.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing is ever completely good or completely bad. Even like there are moments in Path of Radiance I'm not particularly, even though it's my favorite story, there might be one or two moments where I scratch my head a little bit, but it doesn't detract from the fact that the story is overall fantastic. The same way, Engage has some wonderful moments, but it's still, Woo! Well done, Farah! Yeah. On to the post-game. But it doesn't change the fact that while some moments in Engage are amazing with Aaliyah and Vale, you've still got to play the rest of the fucking game. And I'm sorry, a lot of the shit, not just with the Hounds, but the fact that many of the interpersonal drama with like Brodia and stuff is very pushed to the side and very one note. And the fact that Tamara's kingdom feels like it doesn't even need to exist. Even to an extent, Alfred's kingdom doesn't feel like it needs to exist.
Yeah, but again, Engage also has the moments where like you have any moments where like the child characters have to fight their possessed fathers. The fight with King Morian. You have his dialogue with Diamant and Alchrist, and that shit broke my fucking heart. It was so good.
So I think you cut out for a bit.
Overall.
Oh, there we go.
And even the stuff that doesn't work. I know Lewis really hates Zephyr. I personally do not. I think that at the very least she's an interesting idea for a character, and how well you, and regardless of how well you think it was executed, which again completely debatable. It's at the very least an interesting idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just again. Idea and execution. Again, that also depends on your viewpoint of what you value more, idea or execution. Again, it all comes down to point of view, and no one's point of view is completely right or wrong when it comes to opinionated matters such as how you interpret the quality of a video game.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, every Fire Emblem game is good. I'll say that much.
Well, there's somewhere I wouldn't necessarily call them good, but I don't like Fire Emblem Echoes, but like I won't necessarily try and argue with people that who think it is a good game. I just think it's really mediocre.
That's the thing. Do you think it's a bad game or mediocre game or just a mediocre Fire Emblem game? Like, if someone had never played Fire Emblem before and they said they wanted to play Echoes, would you say it's a bad game, don't play it?
Okay. And that's the thing. That's the tricky part, you know.
Yeah, because you're judging it as two different things.
Because with Fire Emblem Echoes, I think that a lot of it is not very well designed, but it's not, you know, it's not necessarily what we think of as like a bad game. You know, it's not a Sonic 06 where the source code is falling apart at the seams. It's not, you know, a Balan Wonderworld where the game is fundamentally unfinished. It's not even like a Paper Mario Sticker Star where it just does not fundamentally understand what is supposed to be fun about.
It doesn't understand
the type
fun.
Of game. Yeah, it doesn't understand what makes a game like that of its
an
type
RPG,
fun.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you know, it's and it's tricky because no, I would not necessarily say that it is a bad game, or it's just really under par and not very fun compared to other Fire Emblem games.
Yeah.
And obviously that's a bit of a tricky thing because, you know, comparison is the thief of joy, as they say.
Yeah, but in this case, well, that's more when it comes to an internal thing, like when it comes to lies. But no, I see what you mean, because yeah, if you judge Echoes as its own merit, you could see that it is quite a nice game, especially from purely a production value and all that stuff standpoint. But it's also a Fire Emblem game. There are other games in the franchises. Comparison is inevitable.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's just one of those things. Anyway, so we're going to take a quick break, then we're going to see the boss conversation. It's just, there's a lot to unpack with these things, and I think that people really don't, well, one thing, not only do they not have again, a lot of people don't have the patience to really unpack this stuff. Like, we've been talking for 40 minutes about this, and, you know, these type of discussions do require time, and a lot of people are very impatient, have bad attention spans. That doesn't help either.
Yeah, well, I mean, and particularly on Twitter, where, you know,
oh yeah,
even if the person is intelligent, you know, they still have a character limit with which to express their opinions, you know, and even if you have like a string, you know, a thread,
not many people are going to read the thread. Yeah,
not everyone's going to read the full thread.
Yeah, usually snappier, punchier stuff. Not only does it get promoted more and more people see it, but more people are likely to engage with it. If they see a even slight wall of text, they just completely disengage.
Yeah, but even then, you know, it's also just that stuff is easier to write in general, you know, and it gets more clicks, you know, for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's less about actual. It's not about audience engagement in terms of the subject matter. It's audience engagement in terms of how much traction it gets, rather than the actual, you know, actually trying to like get a conversation going, really discuss things and so on. Most of the time, it's just about saying something and then getting people to notice it, like it or not like it, and then the discourse starts and more people talk about it. Again, it's more about getting your voice out there as opposed to actually trying to make a point.
Exactly.
It's a tragedy, but it's the world we live in at the moment. Yeah. Sorry, that armor is like super crimson red. It's like Kane. It looks like he stole Kane's armor. I like it though. It's striking. It's very striking. And this boss theme is really cool.
Yes, this boss theme is called Battle for All Our Sakes, and I personally think it is my favorite of the songs I composed for this project.
I dig it. I dig it very much.
Yeah. I remember somebody said last stream that it kind of sounded like the Attack on Titan opening, the famous first Attack on Titan opening.
Best one.
Yes. So these two characters, Crixus and Burris, have a bit of a history together. There was a conversation that talked about it in the last stream. But basically, Burris started out as a coward, but, you know, he slowly over time became more and more brutal as he spent more time in the Urnian army. And Crixus started to, and it was that caused Crixus to start to realize, you know, hey, maybe, maybe being a part of this whole operation is just bad news.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you get a lot of those conversations, Creeper. I mean, that's the point. That's why we have these conversations. We're not here to circle jerk.
Yeah.
All right. So let me see what we can do with Darius. Okay, just to get the conversation going. Again, unremarkable. Have you seen my stats? I'm not even promoted yet. Unremarkable, my ass. I think that eye patch is blinding your vision. Have I said too much? Oh, fuck. Well,
Matt,
not necessarily. We did talk about this, but a fandom doesn't have to be big to be necessarily bad, because it's just that the bigger the fandom, the greater likelihood. That's all it is. Because, again, the more people that are in a fandom, naturally you're going to get more bad people in a fandom. But even small fandoms can have even small fandoms have bad people in them. And hell, some fandoms become like, you know, there's such an intrinsic tight-knit of people that have the kind of same mindset, and that's dangerous when everyone thinks the same way. It's very much like a closed circle, like a cult, if you will.
Creeper, thank you very much. If you want me to post a link to the playlist of all the songs I composed and or arranged for this project, just let me know, and I'll post that in the chat. Okay,
let's see if I can get him with a Sword Reaver. But yeah, again, like, it's ridiculous to say that fandoms get bad once they're big. No, because well, first of all, being big doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad fandom. It just means you have a higher chance of more bad eggs being exposed. And even then, a fandom, the idea of a fandom comes from good intentions. There's rarely ever a fandom that's born out of hate. It stems from the fact that people care about this stuff. It's just a case of, so obviously people taking it too seriously, or there's others who, while they may care about it, they go about it the wrong way, and that's how you get, you know, people who are very toxic, if you will, and just have like very, very limiting viewpoints, and ostracize others as well for not having the same experience they have, which is ridiculous, by the way. But yeah, again, you can't say that a fandom is bad based on size. No, you can get small fandoms that are awful. Well, I mean, stuff like that. You can get big fandoms that are really, really good. Like, for example, I'm trying to think of a big fandom that's generally pretty good. Like, obviously, you know, it's easy to point at things like, you know, Pokemon and Smash Bros. And Call of Duty and League of Legends is bad, but Mario seems pretty good, and that's big.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mario's whole thing is that he's been so consistent.
Yeah, he's very
like with not just the quality of his games, but like how his games play generally. Yeah. That, you know, it's kind of hard to go wrong with him.
Very true. The most contentious thing you get is stuff like Sticker Star, and that's just because it wasn't a very good game.
Pretty much, yeah.
And now the boss is dead.
A blam.
Yeah, well, Helldivers 2, I never expected to kick off that much. Again, fandoms themselves, again, you just gotta remember that the bad eggs in the fandom don't represent the whole group. They never really do, especially when, you know, if you think about it, let's think about it. How many Smash Bros. People do you know that are particularly bad? Couple, like, you know, about 20, 30 plus. Smash has over, like, 30 million people who are fans of the game. That's a very, very small minority that are bad, that you know of.
And I know a lot of, and I follow a handful of like top Smash players, and some of them are genuinely pretty cool people.
Yeah, not all of them are awful and stuff like that. Yes, there unfortunately are a good number of top Smash players that have been outed as being awful, but again, they're not everybody. Mm. It is what it is.
Yes. Now we arrive at the end of this chapter, and oh boy, things are about to get interesting.
Oh shit, I knew we should have taken that left turn.
Yeah, I kind of feel like this is a little contrived, you know, just having them end up inside the city because they took a wrong turn.
I mean, it's just one of those things. It might be, again, it's also something that's kind of relatable.
I guess, yeah.
Because obviously, Darius, you know, there's always going to be variables that you can't control. And this one, this one is not something you see very often. Also, Zelda fandom, it's mostly good. They just fall into that trap of they'll bitch about the most recent game and then praise it once the next game comes out. Though admittedly, they haven't really done that with the Tears of the Kingdom Breath of the Wild. It was more so a thing from Majora's Mask onwards. It's like, Professor Hoodlum, good to see you.
Speaking of bad eggs.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, Professor Hoodlum, because case-by-case basis is how we should live our lives. We can't, assume that one, again, by using a small minority and assuming that to be the example, that's how bigotry is formed. And stuff like that, and so on and so forth. Case-by-case basis is how it applies to everyone. And again, it's the same when people, incidents and so on. Just because this one person had this one incident with this one other person does not mean that it applies to everybody else, or that this, that, and the other. The same way, just because one person acts a certain way doesn't mean other people who are of a similar, maybe race, gender, all that jazz, are going to act the same way. It's a case-by-case basis, because everyone's different and everything is different.
And this poor girl.
Yeah. See, it's one of those things, it's like, it's all good that you tried to help us, but the army that was sided with you still literally fucked us over.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Sula continued being a dick to the people of the city in spite of Darius's best efforts.
Yeah. And for them, it's too much.
Yeah, pretty much. And this is a situation where Darius finds himself, completely cornered, and
they're
surrounded.
Blood, yeah.
Yeah. And he's forced to make a very difficult decision here.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously you can see from Ulysses' point of view, it's like, again, none of the two parties are wrong in this thing. Ulysses is saying they're so upset that they're not and they're so blinded by anger that they're not willing to actually look, again, they're not doing the case-by-case basis. But at the same time, they've been destroyed so bad that you can understand why they are so furious.
Mm-hmm.
No side is either wrong, is completely wrong.
Unfortunately, Barbarous decides to take the choice out of Darius's hands to protect his master. And kaboom!
Yeah, he's already done it.
Yes.
Fly, you fools! I get it.
Fly, you fools!
Yeah, see, Darius wanted nothing to do with this, but it's a case of, the opposing side, while he has no intention to harm them, they are not willing to see to reason. But you understand why they're not seeing to reason, because of what happened to them. It's just one of those things where you can't have it, or you can't always have it your way. Especially in the case of war and so on, because war is a brutal thing, and in the brutality of it all, people are not going to be thinking straight.
Yeah. So Darius is able to escape with, Darius and company are able to escape with their lives, but, they fuck up, and they fuck up bad.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Barbarous makes it worse because he decides to let the city burn, as a way to, help encourage propaganda against Albion, say, look at what these people are doing.
Exactly, yeah. Political warfare.
And then here we meet, can't remember if his name is Octavian or Octavius, but he's Commodus's most trusted general.
Let's see.
And the sort of character that I think Maggie would be interesting. Would be interested in. All right, see you later, Umbra.
All right, see you later. Thank you very much for tuning in. Yeah, so this is going to be a difficult moment for the group because they just did something horrible to save their own skins.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I did call him Octavius. It just unfortunately I had his name as Octavian in that dialogue box. So that's a derp on my part. And Sula continues to be a dick.
Yeah.
Because despite the fact that he helped cause this situation.
Yeah, and I like how things like, oh, fuck you, you flatulent sack of shit.
Ulysses has some really good lines in this.
Yeah, they couldn't keep their cocks in their pants.
Hmm.
Try it, you twat. Yeah, oh, the tension is real right now. But yeah, this is a learning experience for Darius.
Pretty much, yeah.
Being a leader isn't all sunshine and rainbows. Well, yeah, again, Thingamajig is a massive prick. I'm surprised that he hasn't just cut his head off right now. It's like, oh. Again, were we not in the graces of our good king, I would fuck your shit up.
Mm-hmm. Thankfully, Polonius has the sense to not,
yeah,
to not be, terrible, because he is a nice guy.
Well, like you said, one failure is not enough. Not enough to completely, you know, completely strip this man of everything that he's worth. Good dragon. He's a good dragon. God, it's a good thing she didn't come along. That would have scarred her for life if she was there.
Oh, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so, yeah, Darius had it hard.
Mm-hmm. Grima, if you're talking about the scene where, like, they encounter not Evil Vale and Alier gets angry with her, I actually don't like that scene, very much, to be honest.
I don't even remember it.
Because,
yeah, now obviously Darius
it just kind of, yeah, it just kind of feels like, you know, because it kind of feels like the, I don't know, it's hard to say because I don't feel like there was I feel like it should have been kind of obvious to the characters from Vale having red eyes when she turns evil, that something was off about her, and them just berating her for, you know, being bad when she was clearly, you know, she clearly had no idea what's going on. I don't know, that just kind of made the heroes look stupid and bad, honestly.
Did it feel out of character?
Not so much out of character. It just, you know, it just didn't make them look very smart, you know. And it was not fair to Vale.
Hey, Salty, I've been good to see you.
Yes. Then we have a little dream sequencer. Darius has a PTSD dream about the shit he just went through.
Well, yeah, again, this is gonna... Shit hurts, especially because, you know, you wanted to save them, but you couldn't, and you had to end up killing them all for save your own skin. But again, it's one of those things, you know, while, again, I'm not, absolutely, no, I am never against, you know, stories about heroism, all that stuff. That's, you know, it's inspiring, it's wonderful, and all that jazz. But the reality is, it doesn't work that way. And this story is a bit more grounded and shows, you know, that you can't save everybody. Again, Conquest did something similar, with chapter 13 of Conquest specifically.
And Nemesis here drops a truth bomb that the Hellspawn are actually beings made out of negative emotion. And so any form of negative emotion from, you know, even something as small as Darius, you know, hating Havgan for killing his family, you know, it kind of feeds them. And so the disaster at Iber
it's a huge, pardon the pun, it's fuel for the fire.
Yes, exactly. Thankfully,
chapter nachos. Yeah, so now he feels better.
Feels a little better.
Well, yeah, at least now he's not looking at a fiery background.
Yeah. Not being tormented by the spirits of those he killed.
So you know what you need, Darius? You need a good promotion. Good God, thought. Yeah, Darius does not subscribe to OnlyFans. Yeah, so obviously this is like this whole Hellspawn thing. It's like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, this thing is like he just needs a hug. Darius did get a hug from the princess last chapter.
Yes.
Yeah. Sometimes you need someone like soft like that just to ease your frustrations and to heal your heart.
So what I thought was kind of interesting about the about Nemesis is that Reshevarek here says that Nemesis' whole thing is to encourage the worst parts of humanity, and this is kind of a case where it's like the demons in Hellspawn are created from, you know, the natural bad parts of humanity, you know,
and
things
Nemesis
like bigotry and war,
that. Yeah,
you know. And Nemesis, you know, so it creates Nemesis, and then Nemesis goes to human society to encourage that.
And yeah, so it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, there's a lot of talk about the idea of, you know, this idea that if a villain didn't exist, you know, things would be perfect and there would be no problems. But it's kind of a case where, like, the natural darkness of the human heart creates, you know, these
so there's always going to be monsters.
Forces.
Yeah, there's always going to be monsters.
Yeah.
If Nemesis had a rocket launcher, this game would be very short. To be fair, you give any Fire Emblem, well, almost, but you give Fire Emblem characters guns and the games get a lot shorter and easier. Well, you can ask Zane himself. Why did you name Darius in particular? You just like the name?
Yeah, it was the name of a Persian king, and I thought it sounded powerful.
Darius is a powerful name.
Yes.
A storm is coming, Darius. You mean like an ominous thing? No, literally, a storm's coming. Bunker down. To be fair, the wind outside, it does feel like a storm is brewing.
Lewis and I were talking. It's raining both here in Massachusetts and in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, it's like, doesn't that usually happen? Yeah, but come on, it's nearly April. The weather should be getting better. And it's getting cold again. Ugh. I just want to go out. I want to go outside without having to wear a coat for a change.
Well, isn't UK spring known for being kind of chilly?
We're a little chilly, but at least we have sunlight to kind of offset that. You know, like, you can have a chill breeze, but the sun's there, so that kind of offsets it. But, you know, it's like, by April, it usually gets where it starts getting quite warm. And now it's just like, oh my god.
Grima, I guess you can... I guess that's fair. I don't know if it necessarily... I didn't feel like it kind of... I didn't necessarily feel like it shone through for me.
Yeah. Well, again, different interpretations and all that jazz. Just, again, what you feel... And different people can maybe have certain leeway in regards to how characters can act in certain situations. Obviously, maybe... Because, again, like, some people don't mind Micaiah in Radiant Dawn because maybe they look into certain context, whereas other people are like, no, we really feel this is out of place because there's not enough explanation given. It's that type of thing.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Matt. I'm glad you think so. I know that when I posted the showcase video for Chapter 10, it actually was the video of that batch of chapters that I posted that got the most views, which kind of shocked me because there's some shit in the ending cutscenes, like the girl talking about Sula's men forcing themselves on her that I thought people would object to, but that's partially just a case of me being, you know, paranoid because of experiences I've had in the past.
You got burned once about that, but I think people, especially, well, it's funny about the Fire Emblem fan base, but no, I think people generally are a bit more open to darker themes, especially from, in this case, what is a Nintendo franchise, because generally Nintendo doesn't do dark, so seeing something of that caliber, it could be kind of refreshing. I'm not saying it's pleasant, but it can be refreshing. But it's also because the first time you did put out Black Dragon, well, that's the thing. If you want to talk about it, go right ahead. Let's just say there's one thing to not necessarily vibe with a tone, and there's another thing to try and literally butcher a man just for, you know, trying to convey a darker narrative.
I think it has been long enough that I would like to talk about it, but I want to get to when we get to the gameplay before I start.
Yeah, because obviously we can focus on that. All right, we will do just that. Yeah. It's all good. It's cloudy in New York. Is it cloudy with a chance of meatballs?
It's another one of those things that I need to get off my chest.
By all means. But let's get to the map first, because also you can point out to me who I should deploy and all that jazz.
Yes.
You have a cousin now? You have a cousin, do you? Hmm. Hell, we might get to the point of starting to promote people soon. Because, Willow is pretty much ready. She just needs one more level and boom, there you go.
Yes. And you're going to need your characters promoted, because I think that this might be the hardest chapter coming up.
Okay.
At least it's the one that gives me the most persistent trouble.
Yeah, but everyone's, different strategies and all that jazz. Granted, you do grind, so there's that. But generally speaking, I've been able to get through things relatively comfortably. Again, most of the time, my struggles come down to the RNG fucking me in the ass.
I know that, it's kind of surprising that, because there were a couple of moments where I saw that you were just straight up not doing damage to that one halberdier with some of your weaker strength characters.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you've been fairly comfortable with getting through these maps, and some of it you've been turtling a little, but not to a degree that I think is obnoxious.
Well, no, again, I still need to make a move on and clear objectives. Hell, some of them have turn limits, so I have to move.
Yeah. And again, you had a bit more of a defensive playstyle, but you still got through that last chapter with, a couple turns to spare, actually.
Yeah. Again, hey, as long as it works at the end of the day, and I wish some fan bases would learn that. Because again, we're going back to the gatekeeping thing about this, that, and the other. There's one thing I can't stand. It's people who lose their shit because you're not playing the game the way they play it, even though the way you're playing it is perfectly fine.
I know.
Like, unless you are specifically, like, stating, I'm, like, trying to do a speed run, or I'm trying to do this, and you're not doing it correctly, so people can be like, you're supposed to be doing this if you want to achieve this. Okay, I can kind of get that, but even then, there's a way to communicate it better. But when you're playing casually, and you're just playing to beat the game, and do all this stuff, and people are losing their fucking shit because it's not optimal, I'm just like, go outside, touch grass, and shove your head down the toilet. What's it?
I mean, from my perspective, I don't necessarily like watching people fail in gameplay, especially when there's something that's so obvious that they're not doing that's making things be a harder time.
But here's the thing.
But at the same time, I understand that can sometimes be entertaining, for other people, and it's not something that I'm going to lose sleep over.
But this is the thing, I'm not talking about failing, I'm talking about they're playing the game and they're winning, but they're just not doing it at the highest level.
Oh, yeah.
Because maybe they don't want to or don't know how to play at the highest level, and people lose their shit over it. That's the type of thing I'm talking about.
I know.
Like, let me give you an example. You're playing Monster Hunter. Gadget Girl Kylie, someone I watch sometimes, and like, she plays Monster Hunter. She's good at the game. But because she doesn't, like, clear the monsters under, like, 5 minutes, some people have a massive go at her. It's like, what does it matter? She's playing the game, she's winning. It's like, yeah, but she didn't clear them this way. So what? She's not using this equipment. So fucking what? Again, what does it say about you where you get so upset because they're not playing the way you play, despite the fact that everyone is different? They're going to play different, stupid. Hell, even people at tournaments don't play the same way.
Yeah. But the thing is, too, is that, sometimes it can be fun to, poke fun at people for making mistakes and stuff. I love Kinkymation and her streams, but I feel like if I were to get in contact with her, she would probably hate me because I would probably just make fun of her anytime that she has a gameplay mess up. And that's not necessarily a thing. That's not necessarily me trying to be rude. It's just that Kinkymation has a personality where she does kind of react strongly to people prodding her a little bit. And I am admittedly kind of bad about not being a dick to those kinds of people sometimes.
Yeah, but I think you're missing the point. I'm not talking about people like making mistakes. I'm just saying, like, let's say you're playing the game pretty well. You're not making mistakes. You're playing through it fine. Like, let's say you gotta go, like, you're playing through a Crash Bandicoot level. You're playing through it. You don't die once. You just play through it. You do just fine. But someone has a go at you because maybe you didn't do it in the optimal speedrun time, or you didn't do an optimal speedrun tech. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Glenn,
and
good
that's fair, and I think that if somebody is, if they're playing their game, they're enjoying it, and they're, and
they're playing competently, yeah,
and they're playing competently, that's off limits territory for me,
Yeah, very much.
Anyways,
so. Also, Creeper, gatekeeping is basically when people kind of like, it's more of a metaphorical thing, but it's like saying, all right, let me give you an example. It's like saying, my sovereign lady, good to see you. Well, here's the thing, my sovereign lady. The alerts may not work, but I always go live about an hour earlier than this time every day. So, because you tuned into Crash, I'm always live around this time frame. So I'm always live around then. But as I was saying, so gatekeeping is basically when people kind of like ostracize you based on the fact that you don't have certain requirements, which are ultimately frivolous and stupid. For example, let's say you're like, oh, I like Fire Emblem, and someone says, all right, but have you played this, 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 and this? And you say, no. Well, then you're not a Fire Emblem fan. That's gatekeeping, which is stupid.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because, again, especially in a case with Fire Emblem, where the first 6 games are not localized, and even some of the localized games are very hard to play legally. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Anyways, the story for this chapter is that Polonius wants to get an alliance with his cousin Drusilla from the city of Nostos.
Yep.
Which, funnily enough, the name Nostos is just the Greek word for home. I didn't. It's actually where we get the word nostalgia from. Mm-hmm. But anyways, the city is unfortunately being attacked by pirates.
And those are some lovely sprites, though.
Yes. So this character with the red hair, her name is Neria. She's what's known as a merling, or specifically because she's a female, she's a mermaid. The thing is that her portrait looks human because of a mistake on my end. I don't know if I'll have time to talk about it in comparison. The long and the short of it was, I ended up using, in the original versions of the hack, I ended up using some portraits that were not technically free to use, and I kind of regret doing so. But it was pointed out. It was pointed out to me by someone that it's not necessarily illegal, obviously, because we're working with a thing that we can't monetize. But it is kind of a dick move to use somebody else's work that's not explicitly free to use.
Oh yeah.
So I ended up having to change it for future releases of the hack. And I do very much regret the initial art theft that I took part in. But yeah, she's basically a mermaid, and she's supposed to look not completely human.
Yeah.
It's just that this is a temporary design, obviously.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm sorry, the one with the feather in her hair looks very, very elegant.
That sprite, I believe, is meant to be a interpretation of Priscilla when she looks older.
Yeah, just with a different hair color.
Yeah.
It looks really nice.
I did change the hair color because I have a lot of characters in this hack that have red hair. So I didn't.
Also, nice sunset hue you've got going on.
Yeah, this was a custom palette for the village tile set that somebody made. I can't remember who exactly.
Oh yeah, we've got quite a number of advanced enemies on us. Interesting.
Yes, you have a lot of promoter units.
Oh, there's an arena in the bottom left corner. There's a lot of units in general. Damn.
Yeah.
Then again, we get to deploy a good amount too.
Yeah. The problem with this chapter is that there are a lot of enemies kind of bunched close together at the start of the map, which can make tanking all of the hits from them a little difficult.
That's usually the hardest part of most Fire Emblem things.
Yeah, so I recommend having at least a couple status stabs on standby so that you can disable a couple.
Yeah. How many mounted units do they have? I'm just curious. I don't think they've got. No, they don't have that many mounted units. Because I'm thinking like Hunter's Bow's useful, but not that useful.
There will be some mounted units that show up as reinforcements, but it won't be until I want to say like turn 9 or maybe 10. Tackle the sprite that you're thinking of is just it's meant to be a marksman, but it's what I'm using for the basic sniper class.
Yeah.
So, in terms of units to bring, Darius and Castor have a talk conversation, and Lysander will have a conversation with a character who will join your party at the start of the map.
Gotcha.
And then, there are 2 characters that will join your party in this map. One of them will join at the start, and one is an enemy that you can recruit by talking with Darius.
Which enemy?
He is not on the map. He will spawn in on turn 1.
Got it. I'm just thinking.
And I will also say that you may have to do a little bit of rushing to get to the houses at the top of the map, and one of them has the Hermern staff, so it is worth your while to try and get to it.
Gotcha. I'm just checking if there's anything worth stealing. There's a red gem, but...
It's a red gem. I think that there is a sorcerer that has some spirit dust.
Cool. Just wondering if it's worth... Oh yeah, there is a sorcerer of spirit dust. And I should be able to steal from them. I was able to steal last time.
Yes.
Okay, so I think Thief is still pretty useful. Just give us a minute. Just wondering who to bring. I think the team is overall fine. Like, obviously, I want to bring another staff user, but that means I've got to drop somebody else. I wonder if it's worth dropping... No, because Crixus is fast, and there's quite a lot of axe users.
The eternal struggle of who to drop, who to bring.
You know, Ryan can pick off the cats because of his hunter's bow. There's got to be somebody. Oh, choices, man. Anyway, we'll take a quick break, and then when I come back, I'll hopefully figure out my choices.
Mm-hmm.
So remind me, who is it I definitely want to bring to this map? Like, for character conversations and such.
For character conversations, I think that the only ones that you'll need to bring are Castor and Lysander. Because all the other optional dialogue is for characters who will join you over the course of this map.
Gotcha. Right. Do I need to... Again, do I... I've got 2 staff users, but only 2. You know what? Actually, Ulysses, I wonder if I'll drop Ulysses, because he's not as fast as Crixus, who's capped his speed and stuff like that. And even she's pretty fast. Whereas the others are like axe users, so I think for now I'll drop Ulysses. We've got plenty of sword people anyway. Right, so let's focus on charging the front line. Right, so this is mainly things, so yeah, you can deal with that. Cool. Of course, we've got Willow just being Willow, because, yeah. Willow's like my ultimate trump card. When in doubt, Willow.
She has the Will-o'-the-Wisp.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I guess more succinctly, where there's a willow, there's a way.
And indeed, and we have a way. Willow, yeah, just Willow being Willow. It's like, yeah, I'm here. I'm gonna fuck shit up. Alright, so since we're now on the prep screen, do you want to talk about Black Dragon, or would you rather wait till the thing starts? It's up to you.
I think that it's been long enough. So, I have teased this story for a while. The story of my first ROMHack, Fire Emblem Black Dragon, and the unfortunate response that FEU, Fire Emblem Universe, had to it. For those of you who don't know, Fire Emblem Universe is the premier web forum of the Fire Emblem hacking community. And I want to preface this story that this is not me trying to issue like a takedown of the FEUniverse forum. This happened long enough ago that I am more or less over it. I don't have too many bitter feelings. Well, I say that, but I do have some baggage about it. But you know, it's not serious enough that like I want the forum to burn down.
No, but like, to be fair, I wouldn't want, despite what they did, I wouldn't want the forum to burn down anyway, because you know,
yeah,
that type of mentality is just not good. It's just one of the things where it was unfortunately bad experience that should be talked about, but ultimately it is history.
It's a bad experience that should be talked about because it did color, it did and has colored the way that I respond to criticism and the way I anticipate criticism towards any creative work. And I am going to ask Lewis that you keep the interjections to a minimum, because this is a bit of a long story. It's a bit complicated, and I'm trying my best to keep my words. I'm trying to my best to choose my words carefully.
Right, absolutely.
So, in late 2020, I discovered FE Builder, and I would later discover the FEUniverse forums whilst working on Black Dragon, and I would like to stress that there were plenty of good people on the FEUniverse forums. There were plenty who were very helpful with me in answering technical questions and helping me through problems that I encountered during the course of making Black Dragon. But the thing is that I finished the first drafts of the first 5 chapters of Black Dragon in, I believe it was, I finished them in December of 2020, and I posted the first, I posted the first update patch to the FEUniverse forums, and I was just looking for critique, for ways to improve, and also for people to help me with making, to help people who find people who might be interested in helping me with some aspects of the project, like when it comes to graphics, when it comes to level design, because I was not very good at level design starting out. But the thing is that in the very, very first patch of Black Dragon, there is a scene towards the end of the first chapter where the bandit boss of the enemy team attempts to do something very disgusting to a young girl character. I will not say exactly what it is, but I'm going to trust that you will use your imaginations. But the thing is that I would like to make it very clear that what the villain character tried to do was an attempted action. It was not followed through. He's basically killed immediately afterwards, because I personally believe that there is a line to draw with you know, how dark you can take certain content. Mm-hmm. And I thought, perhaps naively, that would be acceptable. A lot of people on the FEU forums did not agree with me. And there was one person who made his disdain. I will again not be naming names because I don't want anybody to go after the people involved with this, even though I'm sure that, you know, you all are smart enough that you won't do that. But there was a person who made his discomfort with the scene known, and I reacted poorly to it, because essentially him making it public would have, it basically put a stain, you know, it basically would have marked me as doing stuff. And also he was taking it out of context, and people were seeing the scene out of context, so they didn't have the context of, okay, this action is not followed through, you know, I'm not going that far, and it's obviously, you know, there's no graphic details. There can be no graphic details of this. But the thing is that, you know, by that point it was too late. The thing had been posted, and people took it out of context, and there were a fair number of people who really did not like that scene, and it caused a bit of a shitstorm on the FEUniverse forums. And I remember that one person, you know, straight up said that that's some pretty cancerous writing when they saw it, which, and the thing is that a lot of the people who were reacting to it, they were reacting to a single reactionary image taken out of context. And there were some people who said that, you know, the context of the scene does not matter. You know, he's clearly just doing it for the shock value. And that hurts my feelings personally, because when I think of that sort of content being used for shock value, I think of something like Redo of Healer, which had not come out by that point, but, you know, it's a good illustrator of, you know, what I think of when I think of you know, SA content being used as shock value. You know, it's portrayed as not a big deal. It's, you know, the main characters that we're supposed to root for get in on it, and stuff like that. That was not what I was doing with a lot of the content, a lot of those dark elements of Black Dragon. But people thought that's what it was, because they did not take the time to really examine it, and they made very little effort to get my perspective on why I did, I made some of the choices that I did.
If I may, just very quickly.
Yeah.
I was going to say, the person who said context doesn't matter, no, context always matters, and I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But anyway, but the thing is that how they reacted and whether or not they were interpreting my work quote unquote correctly, for whatever that may mean, that does not matter to me personally, because what matters is that the initial negative response was so strong that I got this first message on Christmas Day of all days, and I was in it on Christmas night. I flipped out about it a little bit, and the next day, on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, I checked myself into the hospital because I was so distraught that I was having feelings of self-harm. And that to me is the really important thing, is that regardless of how right these Forumites were to be upset about this, the response was extreme enough that I felt terrible, and I needed, and it completely tanked my mood for that day, and honestly for most of 2021. And the thing is that, again, not everybody was as hostile towards it as I'm making it out to be. There were some people who actually played it through and said, okay, yes, there is some SA content here, but like the story and characters around it, they're actually pretty interesting. But to me, that's not the point. And the thing is that, I fully acknowledge that scene, that initial scene of the bandit trying to do something gross to a little girl, it was too much for the start of the story, if at all. If it should have even been in the thing in the first place. But again, once I came home from the hospital, I went back onto the forum and I apologized, because I did lash out to some of the Forumites in the initial response, and that admittedly was wrong of me to do. But the thing is that that the project was removed from the FEUniverse forums. And I eventually decided to, I went back to the drawing board, I took out the offending scene, and I made a couple of other alterations to the story of Black Dragon. And then I tried again. I reposted the hack to the FEUniverse forums. And once again, I found myself in a bit of controversy, because there was another well-known creator who has made a somewhat well-known Fire Emblem ROMHack. Again, I will not name names, I will not name the name of their project, but they went to the thing, they downloaded the hack, and then they did not play the hack, but looked through the dialogue in the FE Builder editor, and then they wrote a scathing review of Black Dragon on on the post that showed the thing off. And again, and some of their criticisms that they gave were legitimate. There were some criticisms about, things that, maybe made the characters seem a little not great. And moments where, like, okay, there's maybe too much SA content, and you could maybe roll back some of it a bit. But again, they also made they made wildly inaccurate judgments towards the quality of the writing. They made a judgment that, Jean, the main character, was not a good person when he is very clearly at the start of a redemption arc. And you know, and a lot of stuff like, again, saying that I was doing the essay content for shock value, which, again, it hurts my feelings because when I think of shock value and that kind of content, I think of it's done to hurt people. In my case, it was done to establish the kind of world that the characters lived in, and also to establish, you know, elements of hypocrisy with some of the villain characters that, you know, they say one thing but then they do another thing. But again, the thing is that how accurate or inaccurate this person's critiques is not what matters to me. What matters is that what ended up happening was that the forumites saw this person complaining about the content, and again, they were making wildly inaccurate judgments on the content, on, you know, the intent behind the writing, and they removed my project from the forum. They decided that I was the problem, despite the fact that this person was being out of pocket and inflammatory in their reviews. And you know, and the person who trashed me, they did apologize later, but it was kind of a half-assed apology of, like, your writing sucks, but, you know, I guess I was wrong to, you know, drag you for it. And the thing is that was the moment that I decided I am not posting this project or any of my other projects to the FEUniverse forums again, because these people very clearly do not understand the intent behind my work. And no amount of me re-editing this is going to satisfy them unless I completely take out the objectionable content. And that is just not something I wanted to do, because as unpleasant as it is, I do feel like there is a point behind it in establishing the kind of world that these characters live in, you know, and other stuff. And it's tricky because I remember that Fairgast actually chimed in on the discussion, on the initial controversy discussion, and he said something to the effect of, Fire Emblem, for all intents and purposes, is a kid's game. And yes, it can sometimes get dark, but it rarely gets to the level of dark that something like Berserk is, because, you know, its graphics are bright and colorful, and yes, it is meant for older children, but it is still a kid's game. You know, and even beyond that, you know, there's just some people who don't want to engage with, like, the really heavy stuff. And I get that. And the thing is that part of the thing is that for me, I saw these Fire Emblem ROMHacks as a testing ground for actual real games that could potentially have the aesthetics of something that can tackle those heavier topics. So it was kind of a case of, like, I get it, but this is the medium that I was working with. It was the only medium I could work with, I felt, with the resources and talent given to me. And to have it be so soundly rejected, and a lot of the people were just terrible. There were there were good people, but there were a lot of people who were bad, and they were the ones who the forum community decided to side with. And it was that moment that I realized, and part of it was because Clockinator, a very important figure on the FEUniverse forum, reached out to me and he said, you know, these people are just not going to understand what you're trying to do. And I decided, you know what? I agree with them. I'm not going to post any future projects to the FEUniverse forums. And the thing is that, you know, again, I don't want beef with FEU. There are some really great people there and some really talented people, but it's one of those things where it was enough of a drain on my mental health that I just became not worth it for me. And the thing is that these experiences were bad enough that they colored they left me this is going to sound hyperbolic, but it was a form of trauma to me, to have people reject my work as harshly as they did. And that trauma was enough that I became afraid of receiving any form of criticism from people I didn't know. And there is another element to this that Lewis, you were partial to, was that I tried to create a Discord server, for people who were interested in helping out with Black Dragon. And there was one guy who came into that server. He had made another Fire Emblem ROMHack that I played, and I personally thought was kind of a mess. And he made a whole bunch of he gave me a whole bunch of ideas that, again, some criticisms were helpful, but there were other criticisms like change the first map into just one big cutscene, because I personally do not like Fire Emblem ROMHacks that start with you out with just 2 units, because, I'm experienced with Fire Emblem and I know how these games are played. And I think that a lot of people are going to feel like that. When in reality, I'm trying to tell a fucking story, and I know, as a gamer, nobody wants to sit through an hour-long cutscene at the start of a game. Like, you can have, there are some games that open up with fairly long cutscenes, but none of them take your controls away and have just the first chapter play itself. And it was a thing where we spent a good solid 10 minutes arguing in the Discord server about the merits of doing this versus not doing this, and we got no work done on it. And Lewis was there; he can vouch for this. So that's the thing with me, is that, again, I will say, I will say again, I have no beef with Fire Emblem Universe, but the experiences I had with a lot of the community there were bad enough that it kind of made me scared to get criticism from other people, because I was afraid that people were going to have that reaction, and especially to the dark content. And the thing is that, Lewis and I, we did not talk very much about the essay content that was in the last 2 chapters, because they're not necessarily, because there's not a ton of focus given to them. It's not the point of the thing.
Yeah, they're there, but they're not they don't make up the bulk of the story.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that those fears proved to largely be unfounded, because, I would eventually just start posting my projects to YouTube, and most of Black Dragon, the showcase videos I have for Black Dragon largely got overlooked. They did not get very many views, although it was those videos that brought Armory to my channel, and that's how we became friends, essentially. But the thing is that once I started posting more and more content from Darius the Conqueror, people started coming to it, and they liked it. And not only that, they liked that it was dark, because they felt like, Fire Emblem plots nowadays are a little too formulaic and straightforward, which I personally do kind of agree with. And they liked the dark subject matter because it made them think of genealogy of the Holy War, and that was a good thing. So it's a case where, and that recognition was able to help me get over it. But at the same time, it's the reason I'm telling this story, and why, despite not having a beef with FEUniverse, I don't have a high opinion of them, is because it was a case of, hearing the wrong thing at the wrong time could very well have killed my drive to create. And I think that is the big thing that is, to me, is the big takeaway here. So, I know this has been a very long and rambly story, and part of it is because I'm trying to choose my words very carefully, because I don't know exactly how far the FEUniverse forums reach is, but I've always been a little scared of, people coming after me because they feel like I'm trying to misrepresent what went down with the release of Black Dragon. But I'm just stating my piece. I'm just stating what my experiences were and how it affected me. And that's all I want to talk about with that.
Cool.
And I'm done.
Right, well, let's take a very quick break and then reconvene once that's done. Because it seems to me, from what I heard, well, for one thing, it's a huge case of some people didn't even, obviously, play the thing, and that's, it's very much out of context. Like, a lot of the stuff that was criticized was very much taken out of context. Again, because some people didn't even play it. And secondly, it's a certain minority that were bashing it, not the whole thing, but the way they went about it, it's very much that elitist mindset, because I've noticed this with a lot of people, or just like the mentality that comes from people who play games or are very passionate about certain just anything, it could be certain franchises, certain universes, certain sports. When you get so passionate about it, often they spend so much time engrossed in it that they sometimes forget basic human decency. And it's not just Fire Emblem, it happens a lot of places. And, well, that didn't help as well, because, again, the criticism they said towards you was so awful that you had to go to hospital, and no one should ever go through that. And then there's other stuff. I think one of the other big things people didn't get was that because you were using the FE engine, they were viewing it as a Fire Emblem game where that's not what it was meant to be. It was meant to be its own thing. It just happened to be using the Fire Emblem engine.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. It's a real shame and stuff like that. Because again, you shouldn't receive... I can understand criticism, but no one should talk that... to speak to people in that manner. That's the main thing. First of all, it doesn't... Even if the product is awful, like, Black Dragon was not awful by any means, I enjoyed it, but even if the product was awful, no one deserves that type of contentment. And secondly, just, like, learn how to talk to people properly.
From what I've gathered from talking to other people, the FEUniverse forums do have a bit of a problem with people being kind of bullying and the mods not really doing anything about it. I don't want to try and say exactly how true I think that is, but I can only speak to my experiences.
Yes.
And, I know that Clockinator said that he was planning on making his own forum because he was not happy with how the community on the FEUniverse forums was behaving. Mm-hmm. And I've gotten comments from other people, saying, the FEUniverse community is kind of hard to accept. Even Armory in the chat is saying that that the FEUniverse forums are, haven't really changed that much in terms of like the way they give criticism to people.
Well, it goes into that thing we were talking about where you get some people in a very small group, but they all have kind of the same mindset, and you get a really bad echo chamber.
Yes. And like you said, yes, the hacking community, the thing is that they're making these projects purely out of passion, but they're also kind of doing it to some degree because they want to make Fire Emblem the way they want to play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
it's kind of like
and
people,
there was a really great tweet that I saw that Maggie reposted on Twitter that said something along the lines of, fan creations are not made for you, they are shared with you, because they are made by people who are fueled entirely by passion and drive. They cannot legally make money from the things they make. And so, yes, that does not mean that they are immune to criticism, because there is still an art to making the thing enjoyable. But you have to remember that these things, they may not have the budget or the people with the time and inclination to polish the project to the best of its ability. And even then, something like The Last Promise. The Last Promise is a bit of a contentious ROMHack, despite being despite how important it is. The Last Promise has a lot of is a bit contentious because, personally, I don't think that the story is very good. Okay. It was the creator was apparently like 14 years old when he wrote it, and it shows in places. But the thing is that even though I acknowledge that The Last Promise has problems, it was essentially made. It's a fan project, and there's only so angry you can be at it, or even something like Code of the Black Knights, another well-known Fire Emblem ROMHack that also has a bit of a contentious reputation. I personally think that Code of the Black Knights is not very good, but at the same time, I don't necessarily want to be too hard on it because I know it's not made by a professional team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like mainline Fire Emblem games are. So there is only so down you can be on it.
Yeah, I think people need to really understand the full context of it in the sense that, fan hacks are fan hacks. They have limitations, and, while they're not free from criticism, you got to understand those limitations and all that jazz. And remember that also, fan hacks don't have to abide by the rules that Fire Emblem is used to. Again, as a company, Fire Emblem can only do certain things because of what Nintendo mandates, but the fan hacks don't.
Yeah. I know, and the thing is, Most Sovereign Lady, fan fictions has a bit of a reputation, and I don't necessarily think that reputation, fan fiction comes with a bit of a stigma of inherently being lower quality, because there is no real barrier to entry for people who make fan fiction. So naturally, you get your cases like something like, My Immortal is a bad example because that was almost certainly written as parody. But you get stuff that tries to be something like My Immortal but with zero sense of irony. You have instances where you have just fanfics that just have no grammar to them whatsoever, and stuff like that. And and so like you can understand why people would have
that stigma.
Might think that fan fiction is inherently kind of bad, and to some extent I have fallen into this trap too, but the thing is, whether or not a person writes fan fiction is not a judgment on their creativity or their abilities as a writer, an artist, or whatever. Because for me personally, I've really, with this project in particular, like, I have created my own world and my own rules because that was, what I was designing this for. I'm using the FE engine because FE Builder is so easy to use that it's a good way to test, like, what a project would look like, without needing to go through all of the hoops and stuff with making my own game. And I do plan on making this into a real game at some point. I've said it multiple times. But this is the medium, like I said, this is the medium that I have chosen to work with, and it's the medium that I can work with given the resources I have available. So, it is what it is, and I fully acknowledge the limitations of, trying to write a story with content that's similar to, Berserk or Vinland Saga, while not having art that matches that aesthetic. But, it is what it is. And the thing is that, again, there are plenty of people out there who like the fact that it is dark and that it goes to some places, and they do think that I have given those topics the respect that they deserve. And the thing is, there is another element to the whole Black Dragon debacle, which is that I made the mistake of not warning the forumites just how dark the rabbit hole could go, and that isn't, again, entirely on me. I know that that is a mistake on my part. What I don't like is that that mistake was not taken as a mistake at face value. And I think it is important to acknowledge that, yes, you can make honest mistakes. And sometimes they're big mistakes, like taking, for example, a portrait from another person's hack that they have not explicitly said was available for free use, and doing it. But again, that's just a case of, I'm not always fully clear on what the rules are for these fan projects, So I don't know. It's a long ramble, and I think I've said all that I really want to say on the subject.
Cool. No, again, it's just there's a lot to unpack and all that jazz. It's certainly a trying experience for you.
Well, I mean, it makes for a good story, and I will say that, for what it's worth, the ordeal did in a way help to give me a thicker skin, because we talked about the whole saga of the Wild Fighter and him leaving a rude comment about feeling like Black Dragon's story was too dark. By the time that he had done that I had gone through both parts of the Black Dragon debacle.
So it didn't feel like too much.
I was at the point where I was not interested in taking shit from anybody, and that's why Matt can attest to this, because he went digging for it, but I actually took his comment, I screenshotted it, and I posted it on Twitter, and according to Wolfox, the Wildfighter had been causing trouble in Lewis's chat for a little while, but that was the straw that broke the camel's back and caused Lewis to kick him out of the community.
Yeah, so, very much was so, yeah.
So, it's not a good thing, and I'm not happy about it, but in a roundabout way, it did serve as a teaching exercise to help me get a thicker skin. So that's why I say that I don't have any bitter feelings toward the FEUniverse forums, because it did not kill my creativity.
No, we're playing it right now. Yeah, we're doing it right now.
It did not stop me, because I didn't let it stop me. And those sentiments of I'm not going to let this stop me were what helped to inspire the main theme of Darius the Conqueror, which is that setback and defeat are not the same thing. So, silver linings and all.
Well, failure and defeat are not the same thing. Again, failure is just making a mistake, but learning from it. Defeat is when you give up.
Exactly.
Yeah, but that gives, this definitely gives this hack, though, a lot more, personal weight to it, and that's, thank you very much for sharing. Again, sharing this stuff is not easy, but I thank you for sharing it with us.
Matt and Armory, I thank you very much for the kind words. Oh, we have definitely not talked at all about the map because of that. I
mean, so far we've been pretty good. We dealt with a good bulk of enemies. The person who wasn't he in the beginning of the game?
What?
The axe user who came out the boat.
Oh yes, Garrick. Yes, yeah. You remember he was the guy we saved back in the first chapter, and who stole all the silverware.
Yeah, Darius is going to have some words with him.
Oh yes, he is.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes these creator stories, and that's the thing when it comes to being a creator. Not everything is sunshine and rainbows. We just don't always show it and stuff like that.
The thing is that there's another meta story that will come up later when we get to events later on in the hack. I've kind of told Lewis about it a bit, but yeah, there was another case where the story for this project kind of took on a whole different meaning for me. But again, that's in the future. We'll talk about it later.
Alright, now it's the enemy's turn. And so far, so good.
So far, so good.
Oh, right, that guy's going for the thing.
You do have to be careful of those pirates, though. You may be finding yourself... Well, if you can get into the pirates' attack range, they'll stop going after the house and go after you instead.
I should be able to do that with one of my mounts. Yeah. So let's see. But we've also got to see about whether or not Thingy can survive, because this is not looking good.
Tricky, tricky.
Oh, no, he died. Fuck, man.
Womp, womp.
But don't worry, you can go back. So hold on. You know what I'll probably have to do then? Yeah, I can rescue them. I can get rid of you. I'll probably have to get back to where I was off screen. You know, that type of thing again. Let me just pause it.
Yeah.
Because we don't have time. But yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, so that's going to call it for today. It was a very deep stream, but thank you all so much for tuning in to listen to Zane's story and for all the support. We all very, very much appreciate it. It's wonderful to have such a fantastic community, you know, just joining in for these things. We very, very much appreciate it. And Zane, thank you for letting us know about your story. You know, I know it's not easy to talk about this stuff, but it does mean a lot to us that you're willing to talk about it. And it's an interesting part of history and also shows the perspective that, you know, creating stuff isn't easy. There's some dark and there's some real dark sides to it, but there was a silver lining at the end.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for letting me tell it. And yeah, it was not easy, but, you know, I like, you know, these philosophical discussions, you know, they're the sort of conversation that I like to have just in general.
And I enjoy having these too.
Before we end the stream for the evening, I would just like to say that Armory at I believe it's 7:30 GMT is going to be doing a live stream of the Fire Emblem 6 randomizer on his YouTube channel. So that's 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, and you can do the other conversations yourself.
Got it. Wonderful. So yeah, be sure to check him out.
Conversions, not conversations.
Yeah. So be sure to check him out. So next time we do Darius, we'll continue through this map. Tomorrow we should be continuing Mega Man X7. God help me. I'll see you all then. Until then, thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time. Take care and have an absolutely fantastic evening. Bye bye, everybody.